So good morning, everyone. As he had mentioned, my name is Amara Martin. I'm the Executive Director of Dress for Success Denver. We are so thrilled to be partnering with PMI today. I am thrilled about this conference, and I want to thank Regis for how they started it, because we started off really talking about women and how we come together, and when we come together, educate each other, build each other up, we are stronger and better. And so we are thrilled to be here with you today, and we have a powerhouse lineup of speakers. We have just speaker after speaker. I'm so excited. I'm jumping out of my seat, waiting for hear all of these amazing women. And so it is my honor to first of all introduce Cristal and Sandra from Denver International Airport. Cristal is an executive vice president and chief of staff and manages Denver's external affairs business unit, where she leads the development of the airport's strategies, policies, and plans related to legislative and regulatory activities at the local, state, and federal level. She is a very busy lady. She leads the culture and strategy initiatives with Denver International Airport, as well as airport's efforts to increase the opportunity and capacity of the certified business community through contracting opportunities, educational programs via Denver International Airport's Commerce Hub. Cristal also oversees the airport's two largest projects, the Great Hall Project and the Concourse Expansion Program, which is now 39 new gates. Sandra is the Senior Director of the Airport Infrastructure Management Development. Sandra excels as a leader, a mother, an advocate for getting more women into science, engineering, technology careers, and as a community leader. At Denver International Airport, she leads 4 departments responsible for design, construction, and quality assurance of facilities and infrastructure projects throughout the entire airport property. She is a registered professional engineer in 10 states and is LEED accredited professional. Please help me welcome Cristal and Sandra from Denver International Airport.
We are mic'd up. Good morning, everyone. This is so exciting because this is actually our first presentation in person since prior to the pandemic, which is kind of crazy. But at the same time, I think Sandra and I can both say this is the perfect group to kick off with. And just hearing the comments about supporting women and glass ceilings and being ladder down women is exactly what we're all about at Denver International Airport. So we're going to talk to you today a little bit about the airport, about the projects, and then we're going to have some true ladder down moments where I'm going to really let Sandra shine because she does some really incredible work here at the airport. Before we jump in, I would just say the executive team of Denver International Airport is predominantly women. There's only one man on the entire executive team. And so you have this group of incredible women leading the 7th busiest airport in the world at DEN, the economic engine for the region. And so we really try hard to make sure that particularly in areas of construction and project management, that we're really doing our best to make sure that women like Sandra continue to rise throughout the organization, that they have opportunity. So I wanted to start off there. And let's go through just quickly to orient you a little bit about the airport, and then we'll jump into the meat of this. So as you can imagine, the pandemic was really hard on the airport. It's really difficult when several countries start shutting down. People are afraid to fly except domestically, and all the public health and safety risks that we face going into COVID. And so in 2019, DEN, what we call Denver International Airport, those of us who work there, we call it DEN. A lot of folks call it DIA, but we call it DEN. We had almost 70 million annual passengers. So we are growing fast. You know, when the airport was first built back in 1995 and opened, it was only built, that terminal was only built for 50 million annual passengers. So to be at 70 right now is just so far much more than what anyone ever anticipated Denver International Airport would ever be. So at the time we were ranked 5th in the US, 16th in the world. We had a variety of routes, and we had 36% connecting traffic. as we closed out last year at the end of the pandemic, we actually jumped up to 3rd busiest in the US and jumped from 16th in the world to 7th busiest in the world. You can tell that our routes went down because obviously if the borders are closed, you can't travel internationally, right? Which is so sad for so many of us. But our connecting passenger traffic went up. So some interesting things here because you don't get these results by chance. This takes a lot of hard work, a lot of really strategic thinking that a lot of us had to do as we saw COVID really impacting Changi and some of the other Asian airports overseas. And we actually started preparing for the pandemic in February before it even hit US shores because our point was this feels different than SARS, this feels different than Ebola, and we need to be ready for whatever it may be. And so if we turn out to be wrong and it's just SARS and we're okay, then we can loosen up and we'll be okay. But if we're right and we don't start to buckle down and prepare for this, we'll never catch up and we'll never be able to make it through this pandemic. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Sandra because, as I said, we're going to highlight a few projects and a few moments as we get into this. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sandra.
Great, thanks, Cristal. I appreciate it. This is very exciting to be in a room with all these exciting women instead of just being in my home office staring at a screen and not seeing the audience. So thank you. My title, as Amara said earlier, is very long, but basically I just get to lead a great group of people that manage all the projects, whether they're in the design phase or the construction phase at the airport. And our staff is made up of project managers, contract administrators, we have engineers as well, and then we have a large quality assurance group. And we cover everything from building renovation to major equipment upgrades, runway rehabilitation, we are an airport, right? Even roads and bridges. We do have a large network of roads and bridges on our property as well. But for today, and you're here to learn, right? And so I want to focus on the PMI triangle to remind you, but also me, okay, what it is that we're trying to help you with here today and to ground our conversation going forward. But I took the liberty of adding a 4th dimension to the triangle, and that's in the middle, and it's that you need to love what you do. It's very important. You need to do what gets you up in the morning and not what keeps you up at night. Your success flight path, had to work that in there, right, is definitely fueled by your attitude. And so if you love what you do, it will shine through your attitude. I spent over 20 years in the consulting industry, and I was designing and managing projects and designing and managing kind of the same projects over and over again. And to be, in all honesty, I got bored. And then this exciting opportunity came up, and now I'm so energized in my role, and I know Cristal sees it in what I do at the airport, and I love that I'm making a difference. And frankly, I had no idea that the aviation industry is so cool. I just love my job. So if anyone's thinking about it, we're actually looking for project managers. You can look on the website and apply. And so I know, Cristal, you didn't start out in the aviation industry either. So can you share a little bit about where your background came from to get to this point?
So I was kind of the accidental aviation enthusiast, right? So I started off in law. So I went to Berkeley for law school, grew up at one of the big law firms here in town. Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck, was a corporate partner, was the first Latina actually to make partner in the firm in the corporate group, and was the first woman to have young children as an associate. So I was this crazy, like, who is this woman, in the firm? But I loved what I did, and I did a lot of big projects, but from the law side. And I also advised a lot of boards. Then Mayor Hancock, he and I worked together in a lot of community groups because I was also very passionate about the community and making sure that even though I was a corporate lawyer, that I was still giving back. So he poached me to go be his deputy city attorney, which is the #2 lawyer for the city. And so that was pretty awesome because it's, for those of you that aren't as familiar with the city attorney's office in Denver, it's actually the largest public law office west of the Mississippi. You've got a great group of talented lawyers, but I got to work on some really important city projects like the National Western Center, and actually got to be there at the front end of that, the development of the authority, drafting those agreements, standing all that up, really getting that work and that construction as well in place. While I did that, I also was working closely with Kim Day, who's CEO of the airport, on a variety of issues. And because you advise the mayor, you also advise his senior cabinet and leadership. And Kim was like, I love you. You need to come work for me at the airport. And I was like, you need to talk to the mayor. And so she stole me. And so I became her number 2, her second in command at Denver International Airport, which is, so I'm kind of the accidental aviation enthusiast. But I would also say this, in some respects, aviation has always been in my blood because that's how my family got citizenship here in the United States. My grandfather actually became a U.S. citizen. He was in Southern California. He worked on the B-17 bombers in World War II. And so he joined what was then the Army Air Corps. They swore him in so they figured if he was willing to die for the country, he might as well be a citizen of the country too. And so that is how my family actually became U.S. citizens. So it's it's kind of a 360-degree welcome home.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, so if we move on to a blank slide. Oh, somebody made it fancy for me. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. All right, so I kind of like to take things and put them into contextual examples to make it easier to understand. And so the one side of the triangle that's technical, I think of it in terms of you get your smarts from books and you get your wisdom from experience. And we're going to weave that into the talk when we share about our projects that we've done. The next one's leadership. There's all kinds of books out there and talks and everything about leadership, right? But what to me is important about leadership is how do you lead without a title? How do you lead without positional power? The third is the strategic and business management. I was being a little sarcastic here, please just do it. Doesn't work that way. And we'll explain a little bit more about that. And then of course there's the fourth dimension that I added, which is love what you do. And then I threw a little acronym up there, GFIO. Can anybody guess what I mean by GFIO? I know it's early, it's okay. Go figure it out. If you love what you do, you can easily go figure it out. You will find ways to go figure it out. And I think I love to have people on my team that have a high GFIO quotient, is what I call it, because they don't let things stand in their way, they just go figure it out. And that's the exciting part. All right, so from the technical training side of things, I started my career journey, if you will, learning what I didn't want to be. And so I know I'm laughing, but I wanted to share that because I always thought I wanted to be an architect. I had Legos and Tinker Toys and Lincoln Logs, and I would plan these whole cities, with the farm and the, everything else, and I'd, have people go through their day and all that, and my mother would be like, can you keep that over there in the living room? Because I'd take up the whole floor. And when I got to high school, I decided to shadow an architect for a day. Nothing against architects, but I realized that was not what I thought it was, and that's not what I wanted to be. So that led me into engineering. But through that, though, I realized that I was a planner and organizer of things. And I think that's why I just naturally went down that path of managing projects. But I started in engineering, and I graduated with an electrical engineering degree, minor in computer science. And so that's my book smarts that got me my first job in the petroleum industry. And from there, I did one project after another, expanding those skills, gaining that wisdom from experience, and then that led to promotions, right? But have you ever been in a meeting where someone asked a question and you just think to yourself, how in the world did they know to ask that? How many of you have had that situation?
Yeah.
It's like, how did they know to ask that? It's often just simply from wisdom. It really doesn't necessarily come from the book smarts side of it. It's from the wisdom side. It could be because, been there, done that, and so they just knew to ask that. Or it could be even in a negative way, like, I've been burned by that before, so I'm not having that happen again, so then you ask different questions, right? Regardless, you need to just keep building that wisdom side of your experience. And then if you are just lacking in knowledge, say, of a particular project that you're working on, then surround yourself with the people that do know, right? And include both. Include the book smarts type people and the wisdom type people, because even those younger folks, especially new grads out of college that don't have that wisdom part, that experience part, they come up with really crazy ideas, and sometimes those are really good ideas. And so you need to surround yourself with all of those. And what I found after leaving the petroleum industry and starting my own business, I was not very smart at a lot of things, believe it or not. Accounting, doing invoicing, the IT part of things, drafting even. So I surrounded myself with people that knew how to do those things well. And I stuck to what I was good at, and more so what I was great at, and that I loved to do, because then that's where I made money. In all honesty, right? I got paid to do what I did, so I might as well do the things that I did great. I think from the technical standpoint, we're gonna try to weave that in a little bit here and there, but I'm gonna turn it back over to Cristal, and she's gonna talk a little bit more about what happened with our construction projects with COVID that happened to be a blessing in disguise for many of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Before I do that, I did want to follow up on one of the points that Sandra made, and it's kind of weaving two together. She talked about leading without a title, leading with influence, and at the same time absorbing all the information and from those around you. And I would say no matter where you are in your career, you got to do that, right? Because someone may have a really great title and be able to share some things with you, and someone may be at a different level within the organization, but you still have so much to learn from them. And so to this day, I know that I'm learning from everybody in the organization, whether it's the women at the front desk in the executive office, whether it's the janitorial staff. I talk to everybody, and I am constantly trying to learn from them. Not just in a project standpoint, but from like an overall organizational standpoint, because I'm like, everyone here is an expert at what they do, and it will make me, in my specific job, better to better understand what they bring. So I just wanted to connect that, because I think that's really important. And I think sometimes people miss that. They just look to leaders, and that's not always the case. So some of my biggest mentors as I was coming up were actually people who didn't have the fancy title, but who really knew the guts of what was going on and the craft, and I learned so much from them.
Yes, definitely.
So let me go to some of the silver linings, or making lemons out of lemonade, as we like to say. So for anyone who's done a project at an airport, it is a 24/7 operation. It's not just like shutting it down, putting the walls up and being like, see, in a couple years, we'll do it. We've got, as you saw, almost 70 million people walking through our doors. So the silver lining for us, as we were sitting there thinking about how to prepare and manage the airport during the pandemic, was we've got some really tough construction projects. Many of them you've seen on the front page. Great Hall, for example. Lots of fabulous publicity on that one. And so I feel like the Post is my version of TMZ. So it was like, if passenger traffic is gonna drop, there is no better time to accelerate this project. Another example is Pena, which Sandra's gonna talk about in great detail. For any of you that have driven out to the airport, right, you saw how we had to take down some lanes out there. I can't imagine doing some of what we got done during the pandemic with 70 million people in our terminal. Instead, we were able to take advantage of 30 million people in our terminal and really accelerate work. Change work that was predominantly done at night during the day that we would have never done because of the passenger impact to all of you as you were trying to go through TSA, trying to get your bags, trying to like walk through with your family. We could do so many more things that are invasive to your experience. And so we really focused on that. The other one, of course, being the concourse expansion. So we really were bullish on if we're gonna really go through this, then let's make the most of it. How do we make COVID work for us? And so that was really kind of the bullish mindset that we took during this time.
Okay, so one project I want to talk about, we call GARDI B Northwest. I know, what does that mean? Acronyms. So GARDI stands for Gate, Apron, Rehabilitation, and Drainage Improvements. The B is just because it was on Concourse B and Northwest on the northwest side of that concourse. And if you look at the graphic on the left, you see those big red X's, okay? Those are gates that we closed. So this project was already originally, it was designed, it was planned, it was, we had procurement for it, the contractor was lined up. It was going to be a 2+ year project. And then COVID hits. And we said, if the airlines aren't flying very much, then we can close more gates at a time. Because this project, we could only shut down 2 gates at a time. And then you don't want to pour concrete in the winter and so forth and so on. So long story short, we pushed the team to think about how they could do this faster. We said, if we get out of your way and we close all the gates at one time, how fast can you do it? And so they successfully reduced the schedule to less than 12 months. We actually cut cost because then all your G&A and everything else is less because it's less than a 2-year project. We did it in less than 12 months. So we shut down 8 gates, reconstructed, added a 9th gate, and opened up just in time for Memorial Day weekend when passenger traffic really kind of started to really ramp up at that time. And so it was really a good exercise in, the what ifs. Okay, well, if you had no barriers in your way, what can you do? And so we really pushed the contractors. Now remember, this was also during the time where the contractors had to wear masks, had to do a lot of disinfecting, they had to practice social distancing. So in spite of all that, they still did this project in record time, which was amazing. And United was very happy.
Yeah. I want to give Sandra a shout out for this because this is a big deal, right? You heard me talk about 39 new gates that are also going to come online. You can't get that done if you don't get this kind of work done as well. And so what she was able to pull off with her team to get this done and really ramp up that schedule is huge. So super kudos to Sandra for getting that done.
Another one, and this is where I'm going to lean on my partner over here to talk about the other non-technical side of this, but our conveyance modernization program is just that. It's to modernize our aging escalators, elevators, and walkways. And for this project in particular, because remember, the airport's huge. We have over 320 escalators, elevators, and walkways in the airport. Some of them are as old as the airport, right? So we're trying to modernize them as we go. So from a technical standpoint, it's not too terribly difficult. The blue part in the picture is like the truss or the frame of an escalator. Basically, we gutted everything else, and you replace all of that. We rely on our partners to do that. So in this instance, currently, ThyssenKrupp is helping us with this. Very specialized industry. One of the constraints there is they only had so many people that are trained as conveyance technicians, right? And then with COVID on top of it, distancing and all of that obviously makes it difficult. But the really difficult part is the public perception. And we have, you were speaking of TMZ. Well, there's a whole Twitter feed and Facebook thing out there about every time there's a escalator down at the airport, somebody posts a picture with a nice little comment. So, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And that's in Cristal's world. And so I'm getting the pressure of, can't you hurry up and do this project? But then we also have the constraints of there's only certain technical expertise in this industry to do this work, only so many crews, then there's COVID, and then, on top of that, the supply chain, as many of you are realizing, has come to a screeching halt, especially if anything has to come in from overseas. But Cristal has to convince City Council to approve my contract. And that was a fun challenge. I don't know if you want to go into that a little bit.
Yeah, happy to do that. So here's what I would also say. We wear a lot of hats, right, when we're in these roles, and particularly in public service, right, where you are accountable to the public. And so we joke, we can joke about the media, but they play a really important role, and it helps give the public really important information. So as part of that, you're also dealing with a lot of elected leadership. So it really is bridging that gap. And I think for those of you that can develop that side of that softer side, it will always help you because you're trying to look at the issues and the projects you're dealing with from a full spectrum. And if you can sit there and think about, you know what, we need to be thoughtful. We need to have a good story for why people understand why this is important, what's in it for them, why it matters to them. How do we explain this? Because when you're trying to take a conveyance modernization that's super technical through an elected body, they're kind of like, my constituents are upset because every time they go through, there's an escalator down, you're ripping up stuff, they're kind of like, come on, give me something. And so you got to explain why it's important, how you connect the story to what it means for the airport, what it means for the public, because you have to help people understand some of this super technical stuff in a set way that makes sense and is compelling. And so we've had lots of adventures taking through technical components, but I think for those of you being able to think about that holistically, right? And I spend a lot of time talking to Sandra and our other project managers about if something's going to go down or we're going to have a public impact. What does that mean? How do we let people know in advance so they understand what we're doing? So it's not just an annoying inconvenience that makes them have to walk farther or a different route than they're used to. But how do we weave that together? And then how do we give that to our elected leadership so they can share that with their constituents so they're in the loop, so everybody understands the why?
Which is why you get to manage the Great Hall project and not me. And gate expansion,
And gate expansion.
Yep.
And gate expansion. We'll get to Great Hall.
Yep.
We'll talk about gate expansion first. But going back to loving what you do, I couldn't agree more. Right? If you're going to get up in the morning, these are hard issues. These are hard projects. And you know what? When we elect to go into public service, they should be. We have accountability, right? So these are big jobs, and with that comes great responsibility and accountability. So we call this the gate expansion or the concourse expansion program. It is literally like taking JFK Airport and adding it right on top of Den. That's how many gates we're adding, 39 gates. Big deal, okay? And we're doing that by building out the existing concourses, which is really fantastic way to celebrate how Den was constructed. Because first of all, very few airports can just go add 39 new gates, right? They're mostly landlocked. Think of LAX, think of, any of your other coastal airports. They're landlocked. They can't just drop in 39 new gates. We can do this in a pretty cost-effective and fast way. So that's what we're doing. I got to tell you, it felt really good to be working on a project during COVID that employs so many people and has such an important impact in our local community. If you think about the small minority-owned, women-owned businesses that are working on this project, we also felt our responsibility from a social standpoint about we're helping to keep the economy moving. Yes, things are shut down. Yes, we're seeing fewer passengers. Yes, our revenue, but we will get through this. And we're part of the way that's going to help people get through this. So as part of the concourse expansion, it's not just about adding new gates. We're also adding and upgrading the conveyances. The airport's 26 years old. It's wanting to make sure that we're taking care of all of our important parts, right? And making sure that it is on time and on budget, which we always love saying, and we work very, very hard to do. But if you look at this photo, one of my favorite things is actually towards the back of the photo. There's just incredible patios at the edge of these new expansion areas That face where you have a panoramic view of the airfield, you have a panoramic view of the Rocky Mountains, and you know you're in Colorado. There's no other airport where you can walk into, you know you're in Denver. So it's pretty awesome. We're extremely, extremely proud of this. But again, it's inconvenience to some folks as we go through construction. So it's all about connecting the inconvenience to why it's important, and then showing people results and building that trust along the way, like our milestones that we're hitting.
Great. So the other side of the triangle about leadership, and I had mentioned, about leading without a title. I learned early on from one of my very first mentors that it was important to volunteer for that special project. How many of you have been given that advice, right? Volunteer for that special project or volunteer to be on that committee because it will give you exposure to other leaders and sometimes even executive leadership. Cristal knows I've volunteered for a few things on purpose. But the key though is how do you lead a group of people when you don't have a title that means they have to listen to you? And I want to hear by show me, I know I can't see you online, but in the audience, how many of you volunteer in an organization outside of your employment? Many of you. That's great. I started very early on volunteering and being involved in the Society of Women Engineers since college, actually. And I've held committee chair positions locally and at the national level, and I've been in section leadership at the local level, and then I even volunteered to be the co-chair of our national conference when it was here in Denver back in 2001. And I gotta tell you, I think the hardest job is actually to lead volunteers, because you have to motivate them. You have to get in sync with them, because you can't, well, you could fire them, but they don't care, right? They don't work for you, right? You're not their boss. And so I think if you can get any of those kinds of skills in a volunteer organization, hugely beneficial when you have to lead your team as the project manager, which includes, right, consultants, contractors, other stakeholders. Sometimes we say it's like wrangling cats, but it's one of those things where it will really serve you well if you can try to bring in those skills from a volunteer role. I also personally think that being a mother is a huge skill builder for being a project manager, because that's also a hard job to motivate right there, right? What I wanted to also say to this point, though, is that another key component to leading is listening. You need to listen to your team. You need to listen to your client, right? Your customer, your stakeholder. Because part of being able to guide and motivate a team is to listen to them and have them know that they do truly feel they're being heard. Most people just want to be heard. Even if in the end you don't agree with them and we're going to do it differently, as long as you gave them the opportunity to express their concerns, express their needs, right? They at least were heard, and that builds trust. And you need trust when you're trying to lead. The next project I want to talk about is Pena Boulevard.
Can I add one more thing?
Oh, you can add, sure.
I'm going to add one more thing. So, and I think this is something that I think about as a leader, is I think also leaders have to be vulnerable. Right? I spent a lot of time this last 15 months being really vulnerable with my team at all levels, right? What people went through in the last 15 months was extraordinary. We had employees who lost family members, multiple family members, who were having serious mental health issues, who were just dealing with a lot of different things. And we had essential employees who had to show up every single day in the face of the pandemic when we didn't have a lot of answers. We were trying to do everything we could to keep them safe, and they still had to show up to work while everybody else got to go home. So lots of stuff going on there. And I think being vulnerable about, here's what we know, here's what the plan is, we're going to keep you posted, but I don't have all the answers, but like also sharing my own personal, like, hey, I get it. It's not easy for me either. Like, I'm a mother of 3. I got a 5-year-old who's photobombing every single Zoom call and is like screaming like it's nuts. And I feel like, I'm not really nailing it there either. And so I think being vulnerable and also being able to admit to know what you don't know, right? I am not an engineer by training. I didn't go to project management, but I oversee, right, some very large projects and some really complicated things at the airport. And so I'm constantly also learning as a leader from my team about here's what I bring, but help me understand from your point of view. And being okay to be like, I don't understand that. Help me understand that. And I think wherever you are in your organization, that's also really important, that vulnerability to admit, I don't have all the answers either. Here's the plan. Let's form this together. Let's get that together. I think people respect that, right? I think people understand and respect that you're honest about some of those things. So I just want to.
And then I think they're more willing to try to solve the problem, right? Which is actually what we did on the Peña project. So the Peña project is actually a large program. And the intent is to ultimately widen all of Peña from I-70 all the way into our front door. So you could say this is our giant driveway, right, up to our house. But it was a huge program. And then COVID hits. And we had just gotten started on this project. And to be fiscally responsible, we scaled back the scope. And we had to work with the team to do that. So trying to work with a team to tell them, all right, we're going to scale back this program big time. So we're going to cut scope. We're going to change the schedule. Doesn't really motivate the folks that you just handed a nice giant contract to, and now you tell them you're going to take it away. But they were an awesome team. And what we did is we changed the phases. We did the inbound portion of Peña from Jackson Gap into the terminal. That wasn't supposed to be the first phase, but that's the phase we decided to do first. And we're so glad we did.
So glad.
So glad. And so now we just this past week opened up. We went from 3 lanes to 5. And we're moving the return to terminal loop out to Jackson Gap instead of being so close. And that was for safety reasons. And, I think a couple of things we learned on that program was that despite COVID, despite restrictions, right, even the crews and the equipment, because there's a lot of heavy civil projects going on in the Denver metro area right now, we were still able to get it done. And so
it was incredible. Another great round of applause moment for Sandra and her team, because again, no, seriously, I will do it.
Thank you.
Because these are hard projects. These are super hard projects. I mean, there were so many internal meetings about this project, even with the passenger traffic down, the impact to our operations, the impact to people coming into the airport, keeping drivers safe. This was hard. And so really big deal to pull that off.
There were a lot of meetings.
A lot of meetings.
All right. The last part of the triangle is a fun word that I don't know if it's really a word, but I sort of made it up a while ago with some colleagues of mine, called strategery. And strategery is, to me, related to the definition for our strategic and business management side of the triangle. And that is the knowledge of and experience in your industry or organization, helping you align your team in a way that enhances performance and better delivers business outcomes. And I will say Cristal is a master at this. But some people call this politics. You're playing games. Sometimes it has a negative connotation. People say you're being manipulative. I like the word strategery because to me it's neither negative or positive. It's just strategery. And so earlier I had said, rarely are you ever going to be able to just ask somebody, please just do it. They won't. It doesn't work that way. And you have to practice strategery sometimes to get people to do what you need, let alone what you want, to get the outcomes that you need. And so this has played a huge role in many of our projects. And so, Cristal, I just wanted, since I think you're the master at this, right, to maybe just add a little bit to it, because I think you alluded to it earlier, at your level and what you do, right? It's not about the technical details. And so while many of us who are either engineers, project managers and whatnot, ooh, we're just in the weeds, right? Like, this is really important because of this spec or this whatever. Cristal doesn't care.
I do care.
You
but
do
I just
care, but
have to see the big picture.
Right, and so to have our group with project managers and engineers try to bring it up a level to help you is really important.
Yeah, happy to chat about that. So I think of it, when I think of strategy, which I love, I think of it, it goes back to my point about storytelling. You're telling the story about why this matters. And so, but that also means briefing your executive and your leadership team in a way that they'll understand. Now, even though, as I said, I'm not an engineer, I surround myself with very brilliant engineers and others like Sandra and other brilliant project managers. And I actually do try to learn as much of the technical details as possible. Like, I really try to do the deep dive. Not everybody takes that approach, but I want to know the in the guts. Like, I'll go walk it. You know, I'll tell my team, they'll show me on the train. I'm like, I gotta go walk it. You gotta show it to me. Like, I gotta see it. And so we'll go do that. And I think that that helps because as they brief it, on one level, they're trying to brief it in a way that is plain English, like digestible to the public. And I'm also on my end trying to dive really far down to understand the technical components to make sure that what we're saying is accurate, right? Because you lose trust and any credibility the second you go out and say, here's what happened, here's what it is, and it's wrong. So while on the one side, I'm asking the project managers, you know, tell it to me plain, no acronyms, just like walk me through this nuts to bolt, and I'll stop and be like, do it again. I want to make sure I get it. I also am doing my part to drill down to be like, I have to understand this like completely to make sure that as we're telling and explaining what we're doing, that it makes sense and it's accurate and it's going to reflect the great work that's going on.
Which is why she's going to actually put on her hard hat and go tour the Great Hall project this afternoon.
Yeah.
Because that's what she does, so that she can get into the details, so that then she can deal with public. So Cristal's going to close out our session talking about the Great Hall. We saved the best till last. I already got cornered about this project earlier. And then we'll open it up to questions. So we'll let Cristal talk. And tell me when you want to flip, because there's a couple slides about Great Hall.
Yeah, that's fine. So I think most people at least have heard the name Great Hall Project, even if you don't entirely know what it is. Let's kind of talk about what it is, and then we can get into some of the fun stuff. So this project, the reason why we did this, so any of you who have flown through Denver International Airport, when you go through security, whether you're coming up through the train or you drove in, you know that our security is down a floor on level 5, right? 9/11 changed everything for airports. And so right now the security is very open. It's down there, and all the lines are visible. And so first and foremost, this project is to move security up a level, to make it more secure. We unfortunately live in a world where I send my kids to school and we have conversations about things that happen in schools these days that should never happen, right? And we all just recently lived through what happened in Boulder. This is not a perfect world. And we're very mindful of trying to do everything we can to make sure that as passengers come through security, they are doing it in the safest, most efficient way possible. We want to make sure we're processing you in a safe manner. So bringing that security up onto level 6 where it's enclosed and people can't look over at you or get to you unless they have previously been gone through security. That is really key, okay? That's number 1, safety always first. Number 2 is you heard me say earlier that the terminal was only built for 50 million annual passengers. And that was in the 90s before anyone envisioned 9/11 and security took over the whole terminal. So it's also about, we have this great facility, these great architectural bones for how Den was designed, but we're not using it efficiently. We've given up some of our best real estate to security. And so if we move it up and make it safer, you then open that up so we can actually welcome more passengers. Because as we continue to grow, as our 39 new gates, remember I said we're adding JFK to Den, as those come online and we get more flights, more passengers, more destinations, we got to make room for people. We want people to come back. We want people to say, I love flying through Denver International Airport. That's my favorite airport. That's what we want, whether you're connecting or you live here or you want to fly through here. So thinking holistically about that, we want to recapture and reclaim and revitalize that space. So that's a really important point. It's literally setting up this airport to meet its future demand without having to build a whole new terminal, right? So you can think the cost of renovation of doing this, while difficult, while certainly not cheap, way less expensive, way more economical, way faster than just go and building another terminal, okay? So that's also incredibly important to us. And then of course that relates to the passenger experience. One thing that we talk about all the time at DEN, and that I would highly encourage all of you, no matter where you work in, whether it's aviation or not, we always think about our passengers because people are going to experience what you're building at some point. So make sure you're thinking about that as you're going through this, both at every step of the way, whether it's pre-construction, during construction, post-construction, right? People are going to be experiencing you and what you're building every step of that way. So for us also, it's about, this is a great picture, right? This is what we all experience now. I'm flying out of DEN tonight. This is exactly what I'm going to walk into. And so again, doing that. And then you heard me say meeting the growth, right? We've got to build, passengers are coming, we have to be ready for them. So, and then last but not least, just upgrading the aging systems, right? We're also going in, refreshing the bathrooms, the conveyances, elevators, all of that that we all know is essential to making sure the facility has a long life. Real quick, just this is a quick rendering of the new security that would be moved up. I would tell you, this is going to be the first security checkpoint in the entire United States that's going to open up post-pandemic, okay? That's a big deal because while we hope to never see another COVID for 100 years, we also had the opportunity to be thoughtful and not overbuild, but be thoughtful about if there was something else like this, how do you kind of manage this? There's subtle things that you can do that can also be incorporated into the design for this. So we did put a lot of thought into that as well. But you can see people are kind of going into these vestibules. And so really what TSA, this is kind of a very new groundbreaking thing we're doing with TSA. This is something they hope to be their national model, is where you're almost segmenting out people based on kind of some of their flight profiles. Like if it's your frequent traveler, they're gonna be marked for certain new lanes so they can go through fast. If it's the family who's gonna take longer, maybe doesn't travel that much, right? You've got the stroller, the car seat, the 3 kids, the teddy bear. I mean, that was me for a very long time. You know, they're gonna go to a different lane. And then if you've got some folks who have a higher risk profile, they're gonna go into different lanes for more additional screening. So we've got that. It's much more enclosed. You see there's no overlooking anyone. Next slide, please. And so again, you know, I think you went the wrong way. Yeah, all good. And so, you know, here's what I would say about Great Hall. Everybody wants to know, like, what happened, what's going on. Here's what I will tell you. And particularly for those of you that are interested in public service or serving public service, you heard me say this before a couple times. It is a lot. It is fantastic jobs. I love it every day, but it comes with a lot of responsibility and accountability, and you have to take that seriously. I take that seriously. I think of it as I swore an oath to protect this airport and do what I always believe is right. So I will tell you, when I came in, you heard how Kim poached me from the mayor. When I came in as chief of staff, one of the first things I did was a threat assessment of like overall airport, what are our biggest risks? I know what you all think your risks are, but let me do my own independent, fresh eyes, cold review, right? And I was not that far into my new gig when I had to pull her aside and say, because Great Hall did not report to me at this time, it was in a different part of the organization, and I had to say, I gotta tell you, I think our biggest risk is Great Hall. And I need you to allow me to do a deep dive and really get in there and see what's going on, because I'm just concerned. I've been in some meetings on that side of it, and I really need to get involved. And little did I know that that would mean that I would be front and center of this for the remainder of my airport career. But here's what I would say. as leaders, you have to make tough decisions. You have to make unpopular decisions, but you have to make the right decision for the right reason. And when we chose to terminate, we knew that it was not gonna, that we were gonna get skewered. We knew there was gonna be every bad headline imaginable. We knew that people were gonna say off with their heads. But we also knew that it was in the best interest of this airport to shift course and to move to an owner delivery model. And we said, we took a collective, courageous step forward and said, at the end of the day, we are here for this airport. We are here for this airport's future. We're gonna make the hard call. Whatever may come will come. But we know this is what's right for this airport. So that's what we did. And we have now flipped this into an owner delivery model. And I will tell you, phase one is $25 million under budget. Now, you would never know that from the media reports because that is not something that gets reported widely. We are actually $25 million under budget for phase one. We are right on track to complete phase one at exactly the time we said, which is Q4 of this year. There will be a ribbon cutting at Denver International Airport for phase one of the Great Hall. Phase one of the Great Hall is that middle section where you guys come in, and it's the permanent homes of Southwest and United. They're new permanent homes. It's new ticketing counters, new equipment. It's new conveyances in that area, new bathrooms. We opened a part of it actually last week. And we did a passenger flip to allow more passengers to move around in there. So I've been out there on site every day this week, just making sure everything's going well in the way it needs to. That's a big deal. Phase two, so all those savings roll into phase two. So what is phase two? Phase two is what I showed you. It's the building of that west side of security. Bringing up the checkpoint, putting it up on top, and then building that. So we're very, very excited about that. And for those of you that have been following, we're actually looking very hard at a potential phase three at the request of the mayor. He and city council have made it very clear that they've been pleased with the progress. They want to look at building the other side of security, looking at what else we can do. So we're, have our sleeves rolled up and are completely vetting that and working through that closely with our airline partners. But again, I would just say this. In the midst of all that, and I don't really tell this story often, but I think as women, I think it's important to share this. I was under pressure from certain people that the story, the facts that we were sharing on Great Hall were not what the public wanted to hear, and maybe not was the rumors that were circulating, and kind of suggested to me, you might tweak that. And I was like, my truth is not for sale. My truth is not for sale. These facts are not for sale. And every one of you is going to face a moment like that in your career. You're going to be asked or suggested that maybe, you tweak something.
Or throw somebody under the bus.
Yeah. And I said, no. So I share that because I think that's important. Because I knew what was going on. And I also knew that we had to do this right. And that if it meant we got skewered, but we were going to go do it right. And I think the proof is in the pudding with being $25 million under budget for phase one and continuing to hit our milestones ahead of schedule and being right on budget. But I think as women, I think we have to be ready to hold our own when we need to. And we need to stand in our truth and speak our truth. So it's not always popular. But it is the right thing to do. And so I have no regrets about what has happened on this project. We have learned a tremendous amount. But I think what it also did was cause us to be better, right? Anytime you walk through the fire, you also realize that you're fireproof to a certain extent and you are stronger for it. And I think that going through this has also made our team stronger. And that have we tightened certain things up? 100%. Did we learn a lot about doing a deal with a third party? Absolutely we did. And those are lessons we'll always carry forward. But again, it's also about making it happen. And I would just tell you, there's a fabulous team running that project that I will stand beside and stand with any day of this week. So happy to answer any questions, but I just feel woman to woman, we're all going to have moments where we're going to have to stand in our truth. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
I think DIA is the #1 airport. I've had not the opportunity, through everything being great, traveling during this pandemic. We lost 12 members in our family, and so I had to travel for various apparent reasons. And so just as recent as yesterday, I had a friend call me and ask me about travel who had not traveled since the pandemic, and said, how is DIA doing? And I think DIA is doing a fantastic job. And I think you're talking about upgrades. We have one of the best airports, I think, in the whole United States, because I have been in several airports, and DIA is #1 on my list.
Oh, thank you for that.
Thank you guys for all that you
that.
do. And
Thank
I'm
you for
seeing the upgrades and everything that you guys are working so hard on. And I've been traveling since 1995. So,
Love it. Love
There
it.
you
We
go.
love stories like that. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
I have a question. Sure. So in the age that we're in, how does being environmentally friendly factor into all your projects? Because that's what I was thinking about. Denver's big on that.
Yep.
So, and I think one of you is LEED certified. I wasn't sure. I was trying to keep track of everything
Yep.
that was going on with that. But how does that factor in the environmental friendly and sustainability
Sustainability.
factor?
Yeah, I'm happy to chat, and you can
Sure.
jump in, Sandra.
Sure.
So sustainability is huge. It's one of our core values. It's one of our pillars in our organization. When we look at everything we're doing, we're constantly looking at sustainability, right? We look at it as part of our stewardship, right, of the airport. So certainly with all our projects, one of the questions we're always asking is, you know, how can we make this LEED Platinum? What are we doing on that end? But beyond that, beyond the projects, beyond the people, the number of business partners that we interface with, we're constantly talking to our airlines about sustainability options. We implemented a program with our concessionaires about food recycling and donation and things that we donate to various nonprofits. We're constantly looking at all these different things, as well as all these green efforts that we're doing throughout the airport. So it's really interwoven. We try to really interweave this at every level, and we're constantly looking to do better, right? I think that's one of the things about organizations. Just when you think you've like, wow, we've really done this, it's like, nope, we got to keep pushing. We got to keep thinking about it. So I don't know from your standpoint how you embed it.
I think one of the advantages we have by having 53 square miles of property to play with is that any asphalt, any concrete,
That's right.
any of that gets torn up, we have a recycle yard.
Yes.
On property. And so we will take a lot of the material that has been demolished, if you will, and we turn around and we recycle it back into other projects, which is also a huge cost savings, because then we didn't have to dispose of it off-site, you know, and then it helps in the new construction. So we do have that advantage.
But we're very passionate about that.
Yeah. Other questions? Yeah. He's coming.
Great, thanks. I have 1,000,000 miles on American Airlines. I have 1,000,000 miles on United. So as you can imagine, I fly a ton. But a question I have is, you guys do a fantastic job when it comes to snow. But snow is probably your nemesis, right? Because the thing's shut down. Do you have any projects that you're looking into even make, when we have snow, how to make it so it's, like you said, I travel a lot. Most airports literally shut
Yep.
down. We barely shut down.
Yeah.
Right.
But are you doing any initiatives, because you didn't really talk about snow?
Well, shout out to our snow removal team. They've
Amazing.
won awards for how well they do snow removal. There is a lot of equipment and a lot of people that are behind that. And I think, again, another advantage is we have a lot of real estate to play with. And so we can close a runway and clear it quickly open that runway up and then go do another one. And so we do have that advantage. But from a project standpoint, as it relates to snow, we're looking at expanding our de-icing capacity, as well as the environmental and sustainability side of that is being woven in. And so we're looking at ways to better recapture all of that de-icing fluid and recycle it and to be able to use it again.
Yeah, but Sandra hit the nail on the head on the de-icing. That is something we're talking a lot with the airlines about because that has a tremendous impact. And there's also de-icing shortages that can happen at times. And so it's really striking the balance of making sure you're investing in that. You have the capacity and the right levels of that as you head into the snow season. Snow for us, so snow planning, we're in snow planning right now. So we start snow planning, like 6 weeks ago. So because that's a level of investment and thought that it takes to be ready for that season for us. Other questions?
I just wanted to ask again, how many project managers do you have at DEN, and how many projects do you have going on at one time? Or how many projects do you have going on right now, and how big is your team of project managers?
So
Massive.
we are building, we are building back up our project management team because, as you can imagine, from reducing the number of projects we were doing during COVID. So currently we have, don't quote me on the exactness of this, but I think it's around 35 project managers at the moment. We are currently managing about 67 active projects, but normally we would be managing anywhere from 100 to 120 active projects at a time. We're ramping back up. And I should qualify that. That's in my group.
I was
gonna say, on the special project side, so the Great Hall project, the concourse expansions, the baggage handling programs, there's probably another at least 30 to 40 project managers on that side.
Yeah. So we have a $3.5 billion CIP. We went out for the largest bond issuance in the history of aviation right before the pandemic, which timing was awesome because then you have money to use during this time. But the project list is it's enormous because you're also, people think of the big projects, but oftentimes it's these other projects that don't get as much attention that help make the airport run on the day-to-day, that are like the nuts and bolts of making sure the runways are rehabilitated, the planes can land, the planes can take off, you guys can get through, the escalators work, all of that, right? So that doesn't get as much attention, but it's a big list, and it should be, because we have to look holistically at the entire facility and make sure we're thinking about how are we consistently year over year investing in the right places in the facility so it's built to last.
I think there's another question over here. Oh, a couple of them.
Thank you. So I'm actually following up on, you were a good lead in, thank you. So following up with all of those project teams, and this is really for both of you, how do you coordinate the teams? How do you coordinate communication across the teams? Do you have a PMO or several PMOs?
We do have a PMO group led by Barrett Ortwine. She is awesome. She is who has established our, I'll call it our portfolio dashboard, which is, it has several dashboards within it, but the one that Cristal I know loves is the one that rolls up to the executive level, and we report out on our projects monthly, but the dashboard's active and live every day. And so if Cristal wanted to look at it, or Kim Day wanted to look at it at 10
Pull it
o'clock
out,
at night,
look
they
now.
can look at it. And so we've created a framework of transparency to that level. And then we regularly have stakeholder meetings once a month. And what we mean by stakeholder within the airport is, so our group's managing the project, but it might affect concessions, it might affect the maintenance group, it might affect operations, it might affect the fire department. They are all invited to the meeting, and we talk about the projects, not from a cost schedule, budget standpoint, but how does it affect them? We also hold monthly meetings with our airline partners, And so those meetings, we explain how does it impact their operations. They may not care about something that's in the tunnels at the central utility plant, but they care about something that affects their gates, affects their baggage handling, or even affects the passenger getting to their gate. And so we break it up by the audience, and then we break it up by what is important to them, and then we share that with them.
Yeah, and that's so important too, because at an executive level as well, right? Because you need all these different communications, all these information flowing at every level, right? You really need that at every layer. So like, I need what Sandra's sharing with her team. I need the operations team, and there's a lot of coordination across the airport. And then also the executives, right? We each have our own portfolio. We're also getting together, right, at a steering committee level with executive management, with the project management team, to make sure that we're sharing, and we're also sharing that at the executive team level too, because as you guys can imagine, a decision on something over here that may seem completely unrelated could have a complete impact. And so we have to constantly be aware that left hand, right hand, we're constantly communicating. So if we're squeezing here, we know where it's going to come out on the other side. But that is part of what makes DEN fun.
It is, actually. Yes. Yes, please.
We also had another question over there, the woman in the white jacket, when we're done with this.
Oh, okay.
First of all, thank you for the great presentation. It was really, really engaging and very interesting, especially to me, who has nothing to do with the airline industry and all that you do. One question that I have is, I think that, especially working in large companies, right, we get so busy in our jobs and all of the craziness that happens in projects. But how do you, as leaders, take the time to think thoughtfully about reinventing yourselves, reinventing kind of where your team should be going, to stay ahead of the curve, right? Not only to keep your employees engaged and wanting to stay there, but also not being reactionary, right? But proactive for your clients.
I don't remember if I worked it into my remarks earlier, but there's a phrase that I picked up from actually a Mary Kay consultant that I had a long time ago, but she used it a lot, and that was plan your work and work your plan. If you don't plan time for that, then it doesn't happen and you're always in reactionary mode. I actually, in my calendar, 3 times a day, I have something in my calendar that says task time. And it's busy, so nobody can put a meeting on top of it. And that's my time to get prepared for the next meeting or thoughtfully think about some of these things, right? Because I try to teach my team this too. You shouldn't ever just walk into a meeting and you did nothing in advance. It's like you showed up to a concert and then you're just sitting there and watching. No, you have to be an active participant. To be an active participant and be prepared, you have to prepare ahead of time. Even if you're a guest at the meeting and you're not the one running the meeting, be prepared ahead of time. And so you have to plan time for that. Same thing for just in general, life in general, right? We plan to go to work. You plan your haircut. You plan to go to get a pedicure, but do you plan time with your spouse? Do you plan time with your kids? We are so busy, we really do need to do that.
Yeah, I would add, and I agree with everything Sandra said, I would add a couple more things too. We started off this presentation talking about glass ceilings and a lot of women holding other women back, and a lot of our mentors inadvertently or coincidentally happen to be men, and all these other things. And now we're talking about a question about reinventing oneself and planning for the future. And all of that is actually, in my opinion, connected a little bit. And I think as women, because of our unique experience, particularly in male-dominated fields, which, let's be honest, this is what this is, I think we're constantly having to reinvent ourselves a little bit. And I think that that is something that women sort of do naturally in terms of how we connect with others, right? And how we talk to others, how we learn from others. And I think it's being open to that, but I think it's also being thoughtful about that. So I always tell women, because I come from the corporate background, you should have a board of directors. You should absolutely have a board of directors. You should be very intentional about who your mentors are and who you're asking to help be with you on this journey, right? I have a board of directors. I have people that I go to. They're going to give me the good, the bad, the ugly. They're going to hold up that mirror with me, and we are going to talk about what, I get to be real vulnerable, and we get to talk about what am I doing? How am I pushing myself? Where am I going? How can I be the best version of me for work, for myself, for my family? Because let's be honest, if we're not the best versions of ourselves for ourselves first, then we're not the best versions of ourselves anywhere, right? I mean, that's just my personal point of view. You got to be able to give yourself grace. So I really think every one of you, you got to have your board of directors. Who's on your board of directors? People who push you. People are going to help you think about what is that future for me, for my organization, for how I'm growing. I'm one of those people who I'm always constantly looking to grow. Every single day, I'm like, I want to push myself. I want to grow. And I like that. Like, I geek out on that, right? Like, that's just how I'm built. But I think it's easy sometimes to get a little complacent. And here's what I would say. Your job is getting what it needs out of you. Make sure you're getting what you need out of your job. Because stuff happens, things change, and you got to make sure that you're sucking out exactly what you need from that. And at the same time, you're looking ahead. So when we think about being prepared for industry changes or cultural shifts, I mean, the US has undergone a huge shift, not just from COVID, but think of the race and social justice conversation that's happening. Think about what that's doing to businesses. Think about all those kind of things. Those things are all happening around us. And so how do we rise up to meet that as leaders, as coworkers, as well as people? And so I think it's constantly being aware of that. And I think staying close to the industry. All of you have different strengths, and all of you are excelling in different ways. You should absolutely get to know each other, rely on each other, have that network. Know that somebody's going to go do this program or is learning about this. Is that something interesting that is applicable to my organization? Is that something that tweaked a little bit really makes sense here? Like, push yourself, use each other to help each other grow. One of my favorite things is I have people in my life that we've been known each other a very long time, and I love being able to help them and see them rise, because when they rise, we all rise, right? I love that. So I just think it is a good question to ask yourself all the time. How am I pushing myself? How am I growing? What am I doing? Be really intentional about it. I agree with Sandra. I spend a lot of time, I love to journal. But it's like planning out. What do I need to be thinking about? And it can range from business, industry to personal, because it's like pushing all of that together at the same time. And so I think taking the time to do that and invest in yourself, that's an investment in you, right? And if you're not willing to invest in yourself, you got to ask the question, why should anybody else? So you got to really spend that time for you. And make sure that you're being intentional, carving out that time. But make sure you have your board of directors. It has been something that has really helped me over the years and just really pushed me. And I tell folks all the time, be thoughtful about that.
I have mine too. We jokingly call it our coterie.
Yeah, there you go.
It's our group.
Got to do it.
Great. Do we have time for one more, or is that it? All right.
There was a woman over here in the white jacket who had a question earlier.
Can you hold just a sec for the mic? Because then the folks that are online can hear it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again so much for coming. This was a really great session. And I just had a quick question on, you mentioned the accountability responsibility to the public. And is there a forum where you're updating the public on what is happening, specifically to the projects that will directly impact them?
Absolutely. So we have a very robust communications team at the airport who are top-notch, phenomenal, who are constantly working on pushing out messaging. But beyond that, I can't tell you how many, and this was, again, a silver lining for me at least, in COVID, I've gone to so many of our elected official constituent meetings where where we do presentations on projects. And we do it not in project speak, but just plain, hey, here's what we're doing, here's what we're trying to do, here's what can be confusing, here's how you navigate this portion, and just trying to meet people where they are. And I have to say, the virtual aspect of that has been so great because you can have a meeting with like hundreds of people. They're in the comfort of their own homes, right? They can ask questions. You're not driving all over town. And that's been really great. And so we try to do a lot of different layered approaches to that. We also bring people out for tours. Now that was hard during COVID, which is why we went virtual. But we also do try to bring people out because we know sometimes you got to see it, right? In order to really understand. So we look at a multi-layered approach because that is so important. I'm a huge proponent of like, bring people in, give them the information, show them like we're doing cool stuff. Let them decide for themselves. Let them ask questions. You know, it's like, who cares if it's hard questions? That's okay. That's, you know, great. I love that they're thinking about it.
There are a couple dashboards that
Yeah, we have
are
public-facing dashboards
on
as
our
well.
website as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, all of that.
Yes. Flydenver.com.
We've got another question right here.
Great presentation. I love listening to you. I find it fascinating that you're both from such different backgrounds outside of aviation, but the people that hired you saw that potential, saw that you could lead in these roles. How do you identify leaders within your organization, and then how do you train and grow them?
So I feel like the second I met Sandra, I knew she was a rock star. And you know, we're constantly looking, but I'm going to talk about Sandra for a second.
You're embarrassing me.
I'm totally embarrassing her, but that's okay. That is what you have to do sometimes. So she and I did a presentation, and so Sandra started shortly before COVID. Can you imagine coming into a new organization, starting shortly before COVID, not getting the face time that you normally would have with your leadership, your new bosses, your own team, all of that. So she started a really hard time. And she and I tag team a presentation. And virtually, like not that long after she started, but I was like, she's really smart. I want to get to know her. Let's get, like, we're going to do this presentation together. I knew it was a little uncomfortable because she hadn't been at Den that long, and I was like, it's okay. We're gonna do this. Like,
I'm just presenting with her, you know, it's no big deal.
No, and I was like, it's fine. We're gonna be great. Like, you're a star. We hired you for a reason, right? And I think you have to do that. I think women have to do that for each other, right? So I think it's a very intentional practice at a variety of different levels. We have a bunch of different programs within the airport to help build leadership opportunities. Because I gotta tell you, and I don't know how it is at other organizations, but historically, sometimes in public service, you get promoted, but they might not have necessarily given you the skills. It's like you got a new title magically overnight, bibbity bobbity boo, you know it. People expect you to have that, but maybe they didn't train you on some of those leadership types. That's not fair, right? Like, that's not fair, and that's not a way to help people really succeed and thrive. And so what we really try to do is identify in a variety of ways and have in-house ways to give people leadership opportunities, ways to cut their teeth on some of these other skills, whether it's formal or informal. So to your question, it happens in a variety of different ways, but I'm going to say personally, I make it a mission to mentor several women within the organization. And Sandra recently got moved into my unit, which I'm ecstatic about. And I think this is important. I think this is exactly important. This is the kind of thing, because in my eyes, I'm like, I want Sandra to be, at the executive, on the executive team. Like, that's her path, right? How do I help get her there, right? How do we, if that's what she wants, right? She's probably sitting there like, Cristal, you're killing me. But I want her to have options, and I want other women to have options. And I also know that sometimes your best option is to stay and then leave for that next big thing, right? I have coached a lot and trained a lot of people and also helped them go. Now, I always get sad because I'm like, I hate losing you, but I also want them to have the right opportunity for them. So I think it's that very intentional, and it has to be at the top, right? The top people have to hear that mentoring, and there's another word I'm going to use, sponsorship. Because mentoring is one thing, sponsorship is another. Sponsorship is also having somebody who's got the executive power to actually help you thrive. You can have a lot of mentors in your life, which are phenomenal and so important, but they may not have the influence to help you. You need both. You need mentors and you need sponsors, right? And so it's about making sure you're providing those different levels of opportunities for women within your organization. So I would say, you heard Sandra say earlier, we have some openings in project management. Now I'm going to give you some unsolicited advice. As I was coming up through the ranks, one thing, because I am, as you can tell, not shy. One of the things I would always do when I would go to speakers and I would hear people that I was like, wow, like that was really inspiring, or I just, something about that, I just, caught me. I would come up to them. I would get their card at the time when we all used cards pre-COVID. And I would talk to them, and then I would follow up with them. Right? We're in your audience. By being here today, we have made a conscious decision to invest in you, all of you, whether you're on TV or in this room. So rather than just look at the website and apply to the job, if you're seriously interested or just want to chat, come up and talk to us, right? We're here in person right now. And we're happy to chat and we're happy to follow up, because here's the thing. We want every woman in this room and on TV who's watching to succeed. So take us up on it. Take us up on it. And if there's someone in our organization that we can connect you with, or someone in the community, let's do it. Right? Let's do it. Yep. Let's do that. So open invitation to come chat with us, whether it's today or follow up with us later. Be like, hey, I either met you at this or I saw you. Do that. Don't be afraid of that.
Yep. Please. Thank you very much.